The politicians themselves who are instituting these policies do not believe their own BS. This is how I know that this is a naked power grab. It's probably the clearest evidence that this is just a naked power grab. The politicians are not abiding by their orders. So from day one in New York City, right, when New York finally locks down, Mayor Bill de Blasio continued to leave his house, get in his car with his driver, go to his gym, and go work out. No one else gets to go to their gym. But Mayor Bill de Blasio, he's so much more important. See, all these rules, they apply to the little people, the little peasants. They don't get to have their rights. So look, they need to stay in place, shelter at home. That'll prevent the spread of the virus. Bill de Blasio's got to work out. He's got to look good, right? He's got to feel good. He doesn't feel good when he doesn't work out. It's not just Bill de Blasio. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she's my favorite one of them. She just cut a PSA about how you should not get a haircut during the lockdown. And that was right before she got a haircut during the lockdown. Here's the PSA.
Debbie, getting your roots done is not essential. Your dog doesn't need to see its friends. You can work on your jump shot inside.
Okay, yep. Very simple PSA. Come on, I'm the voice of reason here. You don't need to go out. You don't need to get your roots done, all right? That's not essential. So it became very awkward when Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot went out and got her roots done. When she went out and got a haircut, she was called out for this at a press conference. The arrogance, the condescension, the sheer pride in her response tells you everything you need to know about this power grab.
I'm out in the public eye, and you know, I'm a person who I take my personal hygiene very seriously. As I said, I felt like I needed to have a haircut. I'm not able to do that myself, and so I got a haircut.
She's very different from you. You see, you are a filthy mongrel, but she takes her hygiene very seriously. You basically just roll around in slop and filth all day. Which, that's fine for you. You're a little person. You don't even go on television, okay? Lori, she's got to go on TV, all right? She's in the public eye. And she, unlike you, takes her hygiene seriously. The fact that she could say this with a straight face, the fact that Bill de Blasio could do this, he goes out one day, he says, you got to lock at home, but then I'm going to go to my gym, and he sees no contradiction here, tells you that this lockdown is now all about power. I was totally willing to abide this thing for a while when we didn't know, when the models were projecting doomsday. But then Dr. Fauci said the models are only as good as the data you put into them. But the data now are coming in, the hard data, and it turns out that the models were totally wrong. Now they're being exposed. Now these people who are putting one set of draconian rules for you and then living by a completely different set of rules, they are being exposed for what this has become. You would expect, when the data shows something new, that these politicians would change course, but they're not. The only way they're changing course is they're doubling down, because this is about an arbitrary power grab. That is precisely the time for civil disobedience. Beyond the orders that are merely stupid, I'm thinking of face masks for walks around the neighborhood when you're separated from anybody, you know, within eye or earshot. Some orders are worse. Some orders are downright illegal or unconstitutional. An example of this we saw over the weekend for Easter. You know, you can't go to church right now. I really like going to church. I think America was founded on religious liberty. I think the Pilgrims came over here to practice their religion. America has always been a more religious country than virtually anywhere else in the world, certainly anywhere else in the West. Okay, so religion really matters. And yet I understand that if there's a very dangerous plague going on that's going to kill 2 million people, you got to maybe close the churches. Totally get that. Churches have responded. One such response was a church decided to do a drive-up service. You know, you go to a drive-in movie theater 50 years ago? Well, you can go to a drive-in church. It's a great solution, right? Because it's just your immediate household in the car. You're not touching anybody. You're not talking to anybody. Well, The Democratic mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, decided to ban that too. What possible effect on the public health could that have? None whatsoever. But it's an arbitrary power grab for this jerk who probably doesn't care very much for religion. So he bans this thing. And do people say peep? Do they protest? No. Okay, and now is the time to do it. It would be one thing if these laws were being applied evenly, if they were being applied fairly, but they're not. Around the country, almost everywhere in the country, certain states have been smarter about this, but almost everywhere, churches are being hit especially hard. The police are being deployed to churches. Meanwhile, head shops are remaining open. Abortion mills are remaining open. In Los Angeles, marijuana dispensaries are an essential service. For many people in Los Angeles, it probably is an essential service. But churches are shut down. The cops are going to show up if you open your church. So you can go buy that sticky, icky kush. You can go kill your baby. Those are both essential services. But you can't worship God on Easter. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because if I'm going into the head shop or if I'm going into an abortion clinic, I'm going to interact with a lot more people, right? There's a lot less social distance in both of those places. And generally, potheads are not known for keeping their social distance, all right? But there you're going to talk to people. You're going to interact with people. If you go to drive-in church, you're not going to touch anybody. These laws are not being applied fairly at all. The liberal places, and look, I understand a lot of conservatives occasionally like to smoke the devil's lettuce, all right? I'm not making any point about that right now. I'm just saying, generally, it's the left that supports these places. They get a pass, and the churches get shuttered. Other places, this is happening too. De Blasio in New York threatened, if a church were to open up or a synagogue were to open up, he threatened to permanently shut them down. Not that he was going to go in and say, okay, for the rest of the quarantine, you're out, you're done. Not even that he was going to arrest the pastor. For churches and synagogues, he was going to permanently close down the buildings. Those are the only two religions, by the way, that he mentioned. A couple other faith groups went unmentioned. They're apparently allowed to do whatever they want. Bill de Blasio is a little more afraid of them, but churches and synagogues shut down. In Kentucky, the Democratic governor Andy Beshear announced that he would send the police to churches to record the license plates of anyone who attended, and then have the cops show up at their door and force them into quarantine for 14 days. When the cops are prowling around your churches, recording your license plates, that's the time for civil disobedience. This is obviously BS, but it's also quite arguably illegal and or unconstitutional, and people should resist it. And by the way, not just my opinion. This is not merely the opinion of some guy on the internet. This is also the opinion of federal courts and apparently the Attorney General of the United States. So at least in Louisville, we had a court weigh in on this. In Louisville, a federal judge ruled on Saturday, so right before Easter, that the drive-through church was right about their religious liberties being violated, and they permitted that establishment to hold the drive-up service. So because the church pushed back, fought against this, said, wait a second, I know that the local authorities have police power, especially in times of plague, but this is not fair. This is not being applied evenly. They fought it in court and they won. How about on the national level? The spokesman for Bill Barr, the Attorney General, just tweeted out this line, quote, during this sacred week for many Americans, AG Barr is monitoring government regulation of religious services. While social distancing policies are appropriate during this emergency, they must be applied even-handedly and not single out religious organizations. Expect action from the DOJ next week, exclamation point. Great news. Because here's the thing. I'm not suggesting radicalism on this quarantine issue. I'm not saying that it is necessarily wrong to have lockdowns or quarantines or to protect the public health. I'm saying that the laws have to be applied evenly and fairly, that they can't be arbitrary power grabs, that they can't be ways for failed politicians to try to save face after they've already violated so many of our heretofore cherished rights. Okay, and by the way, enforcement of these lockdowns is not just an academic matter. Okay, it's not just something that we kick around the water cooler and that we have academic debates about. The enforcement of these lockdowns is increasingly becoming violent. Hey, Michael Knowles here, and the fact is, a life of cigars and scotch does not come cheap. So please be sure to subscribe to the Daily Wire on YouTube, because I depend heavily on your support to continue this wonderful lib-triggering life. Thanks.